Florida's housing market situation just got substantially worse. With inventory surging and freak weather events happening routinely, this is a recipe for disaster. Across the entire country, Florida is seeing more inventory growth year over year than any other state. Inventory is up 69.9% year over year, and this compares to 64.2% in last month's video, showing the surge of inventory is accelerating. We're going to be taking a look at some recently sold homes across the state of Florida in the markets where inventory is growing the fastest. In addition, we're going to take a look at some major metro areas like Tampa and Orlando to see if home prices are dropping there too. Now guys, hundreds of hours went into this video in terms of the research and the editing, so if you enjoy this in-depth style of content, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe for future videos. First, let's cover some news updates for Florida, and there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, Florida had another freak weather event in June, with parts of the Gulf Coast and southeast Florida hit with feet of rain in just a matter of a day or two. Hallandale Beach saw 19 inches of rainfall in just 24 hours. This caused historic flooding, and some Miami residents said this was the worst they had seen in decades.
How are you doing over there?
Well, it's a lot. This is the worst that I've seen since I've been living in North Miami.
Thousands of cars were completely totaled after flooding out, and homes across Miami, especially North Miami Beach, took on inches to a foot of water. And this commenter put it best, saying, "It's just one of those once every 100 years storms. You know, like the one we had last year." And what he's referring to is the historic flooding event that happened last April in Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale was hit with 25.6 inches of rain in just 12 hours, which literally turned the Fort Lauderdale Airport into an ocean. This flooding event caused over $1 billion in damage, and it was referred to as a once in 1,000 year event. The irony of the situation is these freak weather events are now becoming a normal routine thing across the state of Florida. So far, it has been the Gulf Coast of Florida, particularly where Hurricane Ian hit in 2022, where we are seeing the biggest pileup of inventory and the greatest number of price cuts. But this could now start happening in parts of southeast Florida too, as this flooding event is undoubtedly going to cause some people to think twice about living in Florida. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, these weather events are causing an insurance nightmare, so it's no surprise that we got this piece of news from Citizens Insurance. For those who aren't familiar, Citizens Property Insurance Corporation is a state-backed, last-ditch insurance carrier for those who cannot find coverage in the private market. While this program started out as a backup for Florida residents in high-risk areas, Citizens Insurance has now become the largest insurer in the Sunshine State. Over 1.2 million homeowners and condo owners are insured through Citizens Insurance in Florida, and this map shows us what areas have the most policies. Here's the big news. Citizens Insurance is seeking approval from Florida regulators for a double-digit rate hike in 2025. If approved, this would result in an average 13.5% increase in premiums for homeowners insured through Citizens, and for condo owners that would be an average increase of 14.2%. And I don't think most people are even aware of just how expensive these policies can be. So let me give you a personal first-hand experience. I used to own a house in Miami Beach that I sold back in 2023. Now, when I bought the house back in 2021, I was able to get homeowners insurance through the private market, and my monthly mortgage payment was $3,300, with the insurance premium being taken out of escrow. Just 1 month later, I got a letter from the insurance company saying that they were dropping my policy based on numerous factors. I ended up on a lender-placed insurance policy through Citizens, and those are inherently more expensive. But after adjusting my escrow for the new premium, my mortgage increased to $4,700 a month. The annual premium for this policy through Citizens was $18,000. Now, this property did have a separate legal cottage in the back, so the policy was more expensive as it covered both. But imagine what a 13.5% rate increase would look like for that insurance premium. That would be a premium increase of $2,430 annually, which would increase your monthly mortgage payment by $202.50 a month. So assuming this is approved by Florida regulators, 1.2 million homeowners could potentially see their mortgages go up by hundreds of dollars per month. But that's not even the worst part. Citizens is actively dropping policyholders right now. And this comes as a shock to many because this is a last-ditch carrier. A lot of people didn't think they could even do that. Here's a clip from a Citizens policy holder who received one of these depopulation letters in the mail.
I receive a letter in the mail. I thought Citizens couldn't drop me. As required by Florida law, the policy is ineligible to renew with Citizens. Now I want y'all to listen to this news clip real quick.
The governor recently told CNBC the state insurer is not solvent.
Citizens is actively cutting down on their total number of policyholders through this program, and here's exactly what it says on their website. Only policies that receive an offer of coverage that is more than 20% greater than Citizens' estimated renewal premium are eligible to remain with Citizens. How crazy is that? If a private insurer is willing to offer you coverage for up to 20% more than you are paying Citizens right now, you are required to take that policy if you receive one of these letters. Imagine your annual premium with Citizens is $10,000 right now. If the rate hike is approved and rates go up 13.5%, it will jump to $11,350. But then let's say you receive one of these depopulation letters in the mail because a private insurance carrier is willing to offer you coverage for 20% more than you're paying Citizens. You would of course be required to take it. Here's the insane part. That would bump your annual premium up to $13,620, or a 36.2% total increase in insurance premium. I truly do not think that most Florida homeowners and condo owners are aware of this situation. Travelers Insurance just announced that they would no longer be writing new auto insurance policies for coastal communities along the Gulf Coast. And with 2024 expected to be an exceptionally busy hurricane season, the timing of this is no surprise. Florida drivers are already seeing huge increases in auto insurance premiums. If you're wondering why inventory is skyrocketing in the state of Florida, it's this combination of ballooning costs, insurance problems, extreme weather events, and politics. We'll get right into the real estate listings, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, Skillshare. I've been struggling with my video lighting for quite some time now. After spending hours searching for a solution, I found this class on budget video lighting for beginners on Skillshare. I was able to easily put what I learned into action, and I saw a huge improvement in my videos. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. There are thousands of classes taught by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, hobby, business, or side hustle to the next level. A lot of people have extra free time during the summer, whether it be from school breaks or slower work schedules. So why not use that free time to learn new skills? Personally, I plan on learning more about video production and video editing in my free time this summer using Skillshare. The next class on my list is video editing with Final Cut Pro X, taught by Ali Abdal. Each lesson is broken down into short videos, and you're able to track your progress as you go. Completing classes on Skillshare gives you a huge sense of accomplishment. I find it much easier compared to learning skills through YouTube videos. So click the link down below to join Skillshare. The first 500 people who sign up using my link will get a 1-month free trial, so make sure you jump on this soon. Make this the summer that you turn your I want tos into I made it happen with Skillshare. So where is the inventory piling up across the state of Florida? We're going to be using the Reventure app to get an idea of this, and I highly recommend this if you're looking to do research on different US housing markets. What we're going to do is go up here and apply a filter, and we're looking for sale inventory growth year over year that is in excess of 75%, and that's going to show us what areas are seeing the greatest increase in the number of listings. And it narrows us down to these markets here that we are looking at in red. Now, in my last Florida housing market video, we covered the markets right here along the Gulf Coast, including Northport, Sarasota, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and then Naples. And if you didn't see that video, I will put a card in the corner. For this video, even though the inventory is higher in many of these areas, I want to take a look at some different locations to get an idea of what's happening in other parts of Florida. The first market we're going to take a look at here is the Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater market, where sale inventory growth year over year is up 87.3%. Now, to get a better idea of what's going on with inventory, what we're going to want to do is take a look at for sale inventory and compare this to the historical average. For this Tampa market, the current inventory level is 15,271 listings compared to a historical average of 10,613. That means inventory is 43.9% higher than the historical average in this market. The second housing market we're going to be taking a look at is the Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford housing market. In this particular area, sale inventory growth year over year is up 77.9%. If we take a look at the total inventory in this housing market, we can see it currently stands at 10,087 listings compared to an average of 7,646. That means there are 31.9% more listings than normal compared to the historical average. The third market that stands out here that we haven't looked at before is the Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville market. And it's going to be very interesting to check out listings in this area as it's the first time that we've visited the East Coast in this series. Overall, we're seeing that sale inventory growth year over year is up 77.8%. And if we take a look at the total inventory here, we can see that the total listings currently stands at 3,647 compared to a historical average of 2,441. That means inventory levels are 49.4% higher than the norm for this area looking back. And the fourth housing market we're going to be looking at is in Gainesville, Florida, where year over year inventory growth is up 79.9%. Now, this is a much less populated area of Florida, but it's going to be interesting to see what's going on across all of these different markets in Florida. If we take a look at the total inventory, we can see here that inventory is up to 1,106 listings compared to a historical average of 967. So inventory is up 14.4% in this area, definitely not nearly as significant as the other markets we're taking a look at. It's very interesting that Florida is seeing the highest level of inventory growth year over year out of any state, but it's not happening across the board over the entire state. Instead, it's specific housing markets that are seeing a greater inventory surge compared to their historical normal levels. Florida is a complicated housing market, and while some areas are seeing price crashes, other areas are still seeing home prices appreciating. For example, one market that is not seeing a massive surge of inventory is the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach market. Even though year over year inventory is up 63.7%, if we take a look here at the for sale inventory, we can see here that we are at 37,425 listings, but the historical average is 35,829. So inventory is only 4.5% higher than the norm for this area in the Miami-Dade metro area. So we're definitely not seeing an inventory glut happening in this area just yet. However, it will be interesting to see what happens with inventory levels over the coming months after the flooding that just happened on the east coast of Florida. And if you want to stay updated on that, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of future videos in this series. And leave me a comment down below if there's a specific area in Florida you want me to take a look at in a future video. Let's dive into the listings now, starting off with the Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area. The first listing we're going to take a look at here is in Tampa, and for the most part, based on the hours of research I did looking at this housing market, most houses in Tampa are still selling within about 2 months without aggressive price cuts. However, most of the listings ended up selling for 10 to 15% below the list price. However, this listing is a different situation. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, and it does have decent curb appeal. The layout is a little bit dated, but you could take out some of these non-bearing walls in the house to make it more of an open concept. The kitchen is very open, although it is a little bit dated, and there are some nice upgrades here, like the higher end appliances, for example, that looks to be a commercial fridge. Overall, the house is pretty nice, but it's definitely showing its age here as it was built in 1999. There's also a lanai out back with a built-in spa, although I will say this is looking a little bit tired and dirty, but that would be a selling point for some people. If we take a look at the estimated value here, at the peak in September of 2023, it was about $625,000 to $720,000, but as you'll see shortly, the seller didn't get anything close to that. The house was listed for sale at the end of March for $679,000. 2 weeks later, they cut the price by just shy of $100,000. $100,000, which is insane. That is not a good look for a listing when you see a massive price cut like this. It definitely makes this look like a desperate situation, and it's just not attractive to potential buyers. On May 25th, they cut the price again, this time by about $10,000. But then 3 days later, they did another aggressive price cut of $55,000, indicating that this seller was definitely panicking. The last price cut did the trick, and the house ended up selling for just $515,000 towards the end of June. So in just 3 months, the price was cut by 24.2%. Now, it may have been overpriced to some extent, but that is still a massive price cut in a very short period of time in the Tampa market. Although, as mentioned before, for the most part, houses in Tampa were selling relatively quickly when they were priced appropriately, and they were normally seeing about a 10 to 15% price reduction from the list price. The next listing here is over in Clearwater, Florida, and I wanted to show you guys an interesting feature here, and it's super helpful when you're looking at properties, especially in Florida. But what you can do here is actually click on the map, and you can actually go over here and turn on the flood map, and this is going to show you the flood risk associated with this property. So right off the bat, this is not a great sign based on the fact that this seems to be one of the only houses on that street that appears to be in an area that has flooded in the past, and you definitely don't want to end up buying the low-lying house on the street that ends up flooding when there's excessive rainwater, and we already know that is a commonplace in Florida. As far as the house goes itself, it is a rather plain home. There have been maybe some updated light fixtures and things like that, but nothing too special. It looks like this is the original floor, so that possibly indicates that the house hasn't flooded in the past, but that is just speculation. But that doesn't mean that the property surrounding it doesn't flood during heavy rainstorms, for example. This could definitely be a good starter home for people. However, only having one bathroom limits the potential here, as somebody looking to start a family, for example, is definitely going to want a 2-bathroom house. The fenced-in yard is definitely a plus, and you also have a shed in the back, which is great because most of these houses in Florida do not have a garage for storage, so you have almost nowhere to put your stuff. If we take a look at the description here for the listing, we can see that it mentions that the seller said, "Let's get it sold." So it mentions to take advantage of this $49,000 price drop. So right off the bat, it looks like there have been some aggressive price cuts on this listing. Taking a look at the price history here, the house originally sold for $189,000 in 2020. That was honestly really great timing for that buyer, as that was just before home prices exploded based on the global pandemic and people reshuffling around. Now, the owner mentioned that they repainted the entire house inside and out, and at that point they ended up listing it towards the end of December for $360,000, just about 4 years after buying it. So based on the fact that it looks like all they did here was paint the house, the seller was definitely looking to cash out and make a profit. Now, after the listing was up for about 2 months, they cut the price by $11,000. However, then we see the aggressive $49,000 price cut just 2 months after that. The new price got a lot of attention, and it ended up selling for $302,000 at the end of this June. Overall, the price was cut by 16.2%, but it sold within 6 months. It's definitely taking longer than before to sell a house, but that's actually not terrible compared to some of the listings we're going to look at shortly, where these houses just sat on the market for almost a year in some cases. So this was definitely not what I would call a price crash. This would be in a price correction territory, and this seller still made a profit, likely of about $75,000 after accounting for closing costs, commissions, and the paint job cost. Up next, we have a condo that sold over in Dunedin, Florida. This is an area on the coast just north of Clearwater. Taking a look at the listing here, the unit is in original condition without any updates, and it was definitely in need of a remodel at this point in time. Now, having this outdoor porch area is a plus. However, you are going to notice that the carpet in this unit is dirty and most likely would need to be removed by the new owner. So there is some work that had to be done by whoever ended up purchasing this unit. The listing did mention that there was some fresh paint as well, but it looks like they only painted the bathroom, for example, as this room here definitely did not get a fresh coat of paint. This is in a community that has a pool as well as some other amenities, and it is also a 55 and up. That is going to limit the potential buyer pool, but still, that does not justify justify the insanely low price that this ended up selling for. In September of 2023, at the peak, the estimated value here was between $170,000 to $210,000. But you're going to see shortly, the seller got nothing close to that. Taking a look at the price history here, the condo was listed for sale for $175,000 in October of 2023. It was followed by two $5,000 price cuts after being on the market for about 4 months. After that, the price cuts got more aggressive, with a $15,000 price cut in April, followed by a $10,000 price cut in May, bringing it down to $140,000. But here's the crazy part. 1 month later, the condo sold for just $100,000. That is a price reduction of about 43% from the original list price. While this definitely constitutes a price crash, this was most likely a panic seller who wanted to get out before hurricane season. However, these sellers can become a problem for other people looking to sell, especially in the same complex, as it affects the comps for the entire community. And if you have enough of these panic sellers in the market, this could lead to an overall price collapse. However, this next listing in Clearwater, Florida tells a different story. This is a really cute small house that would be great for a retired couple or possibly a young couple without kids. Overall, everything has been painted and updated. It looks like it has new tile in the bathroom shower, and it is a nice turnkey unit for somebody who is looking to just buy something and get right into it. It's also been staged nicely, which is going to be a plus for potential buyers as they can see exactly what the layout might look like. And it's also great that they did these puck lights throughout the house, as it's not too expensive and that can make a huge difference. In addition, you can see new countertops in the kitchen as well as new appliances, so this is definitely a beautiful turnkey home, although it is on the smaller side. It also has a fenced-in yard, so this house would work great for a couple who possibly just had pets and didn't necessarily have children. Taking a look at the price history here, supposedly the house sold for $130,000 this April, and it was then relisted at $255,000. Now, I am a little bit skeptical of that timeline because it did mention in the description that this house had a new roof, and it usually takes a few months to get a roofing permit, but nonetheless, it is possible that somebody bought it that cheap, fixed it up in about 5 weeks as a very quick flip. And what's interesting about this listing is just about 6 weeks later, it ended up selling for the ask price of $255,000. So I did want to point out here that nice turnkey houses that are staged well and priced appropriately are still selling relatively quickly in this market. I would say thus far the inventory surge in this market hasn't resulted in a price crash, but you definitely cannot overprice your listing and expect to sell it very quickly. Now we're going to switch areas and take a look at the Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford market. Our first listing is this 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom townhouse in Kissimmee. According to the listing description, the house has never been rented and it was recently built in 2022, and all of this very nice furniture is also included with the place according to the listing. Now, based on the twin beds in this bedroom, I'm thinking this was possibly set up as an Airbnb, and a lot of these are now coming on the market as investors are backing out of the short-term rental business. But seeing as the listing description mentions that it was never rented, that is definitely puzzling. Maybe the HOA here restricts that type of use, and the current owner did not know that. There's also some toiletries by the sink, so it does look like, again, this was set up for short-term guests. But overall, everything else looks completely brand new, and all of this furniture most likely has never even been used. So for somebody looking for a fully furnished turnkey house with no maintenance, this would be a very solid option. Taking a look at the price history here, the owner paid just over $390,000 for the unit at the end of 2022, and then they ended up listing this for sale last August for $540,000, clearly looking to make a profit. They cut the price multiple times down to just under $500,000 at the end of 2023, and finally they removed the listing altogether in February of this year before relisting the property a week later at $479,900. $300. Even at that price though, there was clearly no buyer in sight, as over the next 2 months, they did 2 roughly $10,000 price cuts. Now at the end of May, they got nervous and aggressively cut the price by $40,000. And here's the interesting part to me. Finally, the unit sold at the end of June for $390,000, the exact price that they paid for it. To me, this is a perfect indicator that the top of the market in Florida, especially in this area, was around the end of 2022. The price was ultimately cut by 27.8%, but I wouldn't quite call this a crash because it was clearly overpriced and the owner was trying to recoup all of their costs associated with furnishing this entire place. Now, the seller probably lost $35,000 between closing costs paid when they bought it and the seller's commission for selling it. In addition, they must have spent at least $10,000 to $15,000 on furniture. So not including any holding costs for the time period they owned it, which was about 2 years, this was likely a $50,000 or more loss for this potential short-term rental business that never got off the ground. Our next listing in this market is in Orlando, Florida. Now this is an older home that has been redone with fresh paint inside and out, in addition to new flooring throughout the home. It also looks like the flipper here redid the kitchen, and the bathrooms also have some updates as well. Once we get over to those, you can see that the faucets and fixtures are all new and there is fresh tile in the shower. So this is definitely a solid flip. You would have to look up close to see if it was good workmanship and that kind of thing. So this would be your typical turnkey listing in Orlando. It's also a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom property, so it is a desirable size for somebody who is starting a family or currently has a small family. The house was listed at the beginning of May for $359,000, and after 2 price cuts, it brought the price down to about $340,000, and it ended up selling for $320,000. So that is about 11% below the list price, and for the most part, this exact scenario played out over and over with the Orlando listings I researched for this video. Turnkey houses like this in Orlando were selling for about 10 to 15% below the list price relatively quickly. So overall, the Orlando market seems to be holding up a lot better compared to other parts of Florida. The last listing we're going to be looking at in this market is in Sanford, Florida. This city is located just north of Orlando and is situated right by Lake Monroe. Now, this is a massive 6-bedroom, 4-bathroom house, so it likely would be suitable for a very large family or a multi-generational household, which is pretty common in the state of Florida. Overall, the interior is pretty dated. It looks like it has new carpet, and we also saw mention of a fenced-in yard, and the vinyl fence is nice because that is usually good for 10 or 15 years, so definitely a plus that that is vinyl as opposed to wood. Taking a look at the price activity here, the house was listed for sale at the beginning of February for $475,000, and after a series of price cuts over the next 2 months, the price was reduced to $395,000 to be just under the $400K mark. That price reduction did the trick, and the house sold at the beginning of June for $393,000. At 17.3% below the list price, this isn't quite a price crash, but definitely an indication that the market is shifting here in Sanford. And having looked at quite a few listings in Sanford, Florida during my research, I will say that the price cuts were more aggressive in this area compared to Orlando, Florida. Now we're going to take a look at the third market on our list, which is the Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville area, starting off with this 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Cape Canaveral, Florida. This city is right on the Atlantic coast and just south of the Kennedy Space Center. Now the layout and interior is a bit dated, but it does have fresh paint and new appliances. And I will say that this recessed ceiling in the dining area is nice. There are some walls in the kitchen here that most people would likely want to take out as long as they were non-bearing, so it would most likely need a bit of an upgrade, especially to this kitchen, but if you were okay with the current layout, you might just leave it the way it is. It does appear to have some updates here, like these French doors going out to your patio area from the primary bedroom. The house also has these nice plantation shutters throughout the entire home. Taking a look at the price history here, the house was originally listed for sale last September for $475,000. After a series of price cuts, the listing was removed altogether, and then the property was relisted at $429,900 this February. Strangely, the listing was removed again a month later year, and it was then relisted at $439,000, $10,000 more than before. Over the next 5 weeks, multiple price cuts took it down to $399,000, but the final sale price was just $350,000 in mid-June. That's a price cut of 26.3% from the original list price back in 2023, which is a significant crash-like price cut. This housing market is definitely feeling some pain. The next listing in this market is in Cocoa Beach, Florida, which is just south of Cape Canaveral. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhouse with great curb appeal and well-maintained landscaping. Despite the somewhat dated tile floor, the house has a great open layout with very high ceilings, and it has also been staged very well. I will say the kitchen is on the smaller side, but you definitely have room to expand that kitchen if you were to remodel this property. It also mentions in the listing that the house is just 1 block away from the ocean, so that is a great selling point for people who want to have walkability right to the beach. This property also has 2 covered screen porch areas in addition to an oversized 2-car garage. Since a lot of houses in Florida don't have a garage at all, this is definitely a positive, especially for a family who might be needing to store stuff from time to time. Or you might just be looking to get your vehicles out of the way during a bad storm potentially. And here we have a visual of just how close this house is to the beach. So yeah, they were not kidding. You are only 1 block away from Cocoa Beach. Taking a look at the price history now, the property was listed in the middle of May for $625,000. However, the seller was antsy and cut the price by $26,000 2 weeks later. And that was followed by an aggressive $49,000 price cut just a month after being listed. So 1 month into having this property listed, they cut the price by a total of $75,000. But here's the real shocker. This house ended up selling for just $475,000. At a price reduction of 24% in just 5 weeks, this indicates there is definitely panic selling going on in the market here. And as mentioned before, this can be extremely problematic for other listings in the area when you have sellers who do this. Now we're going to take a look at the 4th and final housing market for this video, and that is Gainesville, Florida. Now this is an area that is not nearly as popular as some of these other areas we've looked at, and the inventory is creeping up here, but it wasn't as substantial as we've seen with some of these areas right on the coast. Also guys, if you've made it this far in the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for notifications about future Florida housing market videos. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, which could definitely use some updating inside. There are some nice features like these French doors that go out to your screened porch area. And if you take a look at the bathroom, there are some updates like the faucets, but it has not been completely updated, and most of this house is looking pretty tired. It also mentioned in the listing description that this came with brand new appliances as well as a new AC unit. The house was listed for sale last September for $319,000, and then the price was cut by $24,000 a month later, followed by a $15,000 price cut in February. Now the house eventually sold at the end of May at a price of $265,000. So it took about 8 months for this house to sell and a 17% price cut. Usually for a price crash, you're talking a 20% or greater reduction. So at 17%, we're still in correction territory, but it was definitely a sign that this market may be slowing down and that there are not as many interested buyers in Gainesville, Florida. And then we have our final listing, which was also in Gainesville, Florida. Now, not everybody likes brick houses, and you could paint the exterior brick white to really modernize the appearance. This house is on a nice corner lot, and it has a driveway and garage on the other side. So overall, I'm a big fan of this layout being on a corner lot. Inside, it is a little bit dated, but it could be a decent starter home for a family, and it is a 4-bed, 2-bath, which is a desirable size. It is funny to see a fireplace in Florida, as you wouldn't think of people wanting that, but Gainesville is further north, so in the winter it is going to get chilly, and you may take advantage of that fireplace. The house also has a in-ground pool in the backyard, and it also mentioned in the listing that the entire house was replumbed and the roof was replaced in 2021. So in these older homes, that plumbing can be a big deal. That would be a positive for somebody who is looking for a lower maintenance property. Taking a look at the price history now, the house was listed last September for $449,000. After 3 sizable price cuts, the listing was removed removed and then relisted at $379,000 this April. Eventually, the house sold for just $360,000 in June. So it took 9 months and a total price cut of just shy of 20% to sell this house. Now, it was a little bit dated and in need of some TLC, but still, a 20% price cut on a house is substantial. Overall, there are definitely some signs of weakness here in the Gainesville, Florida market. Houses are taking quite a bit of time to sell, and it's taking a pretty substantial price cut. But we'll have to keep track of this housing market over time in this series. Now we're going to look at some of the specific areas that you guys requested in the last 2 videos, and don't forget to leave me a comment down below if there's a part of Florida or of the country that you want me to look at in the next video. Our first commenter here said, "We have an entire neighborhood here in St. Pete called Shore Acres that has flooded out. About 1,200 homes twice in the last 2 years. Needless to say, for sale signs are popping up like weeds in Shore Acres. Those wanting to stay now have to choose to tear down and build up or raise their home above flood levels. Very expensive options either way." So let's take a look at this area. Here we are looking at Shore Acres over in the Reventure app, and boy, our commenter was not kidding. If you take a look here, sale inventory growth is up 145.7% year over year, and just north of that you have 138.1% growth, and this area up here comes in at 220% year over year sale inventory growth. I'm imagining that most of this here flooded during that same timeline, hence why we're seeing such an uptick in sale inventory. Now, if we take a look here at the total for sale inventory, we can see here looking at Shore Acres that the inventory has absolutely exploded here. There's currently 247 listings, which far exceeds anything on record here in the app, and the historical average for this area is just 129 listings. So that tells us that inventory is currently 91.5% above normal, so I would expect to find some significant price cuts when we take a look at some listings. First, we have this active listing, and as you can see, there was just a $50,000 price cut on this. Overall, it looks like a pretty nice house with some decent landscaping that has been done out front, and it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, so it's a desirable size. You have some updates here, like a new front door and some modern touches like the ceiling fan that's been upgraded, and you also have that sliding barn door. The kitchen is small, but the double oven is definitely not common in Florida, so whoever owned this house was definitely into cooking at home. Taking a look at the price history here, this was listed at the beginning of May for $450,000, and about 3 weeks later, they cut the price by $51,000, which is an aggressive price cut in excess of 10% of the list price. From there, a little over a month later, they've cut the price again by $50,000. So in under 2 months here, they've cut the price of this listing by 22.5%, and it still hasn't sold. So they may need to cut the price further to get a buyer to show up for this particular listing. Up next, we have this recently sold listing, which was right on the canal, and as you can see, this sold for $895,000, and based on the location of this house, I would definitely suspect that it flooded during this event that our commenter was talking about. Now, it does have wood flooring, so maybe it didn't flood, as that would have most likely been damaged or in need of being completely replaced, but it doesn't mean the property surrounding it didn't take on water. And at one point, I'm sure this would have sold for $1 million or close to it, especially given the fact that you have a pool and direct access to the water. Now, right in the description, it mentions, please note this significant price reduction. So clearly, whoever owned this was looking to sell it relatively quickly. Taking a look at the estimated value here, in February, it was showing an estimated value over $1 million, but as we know, they did not get anything close to that. Taking a look at the price history here, this was listed in the beginning of January for $1.18 million, and then there was a series of price cuts. They brought the price down to $995,000 in March to be under the $1 million mark, but that still didn't bring in a buyer, and they ultimately cut the price down to $895,000 in April, and then the property sold at that price. So that is a total price reduction of 24.2%. Now, they may have overpriced it to some extent here, seeing as they bought it for $6 $625,000, but nonetheless, that is a significant price reduction. It looks like they were still able to make some type of profit here though, as long as they didn't have to put too much money into repairs after any type of flooding event. The next commenter said, "Can you look at the Villages in Florida? I plan to move there and rent, but would be curious to know your thoughts on where the market might go." So let's take a look at some listings in the Villages. And as you can see across this whole area, we are not seeing the same type of year-over-year inventory growth that we have seen along the coast. So I'm going to guess right off the bat, we are not going to be seeing as significant of price cuts in this area. And if we change this to the percentage of listings with a price cut, we can see it's currently at 29.1%. And if we take a look here, this is right in line with the historical average for this area. So I would say this seems to be a market that is relatively unaffected so far with the overall housing market crash or correction that is going on in different parts of Florida. The first home here is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, which is a perfect size for a retired couple, and that's exactly what you're going to see in the Villages. Taking a look at the price history here, this was listed in the middle of March for $359,900. They did have 2 price cuts of roughly $10,000, but then this sold for $339,000, or just 5.9% below the list price. So based on this listing, we are definitely not seeing a correction or a crash going on in the Villages so far. This recently sold home here is a larger home, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, just under 2,500 square feet. This is going to be a more spacious layout. Definitely has some nice touches inside and somewhere that most people would just absolutely love to live. If we take a look at the price history, this listed in the middle of May for $649,000 and it sold roughly 1 month later at $610,000, which is a price reduction of just 6.1%. So I would say overall, the Villages is not seeing a price correction or a price crash right now. And this is just further evidence of how Florida is a complicated housing market, and you're not going to see a price crash happening everywhere. The next commenter here said, "Please check out Ormond Beach, Florida." So let's check it out. Taking a look at Ormond Beach now, we can see year-over-year inventory growth is up 97.2%, which is significant. And if we take a look at listings with a price cut, 47.5% of listings in this area have cut the price. So when half of the listings in the entire market have a price cut, that is definitely not a good sign. Here we have a house that recently sold in this market. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, just under 1,700 square feet, and this just sold for $310,000. It looks like the kitchen was upgraded at some point, but it wasn't too recent in my opinion based on the cabinetry and the choice of countertop. Taking a look at the price history, we can see they listed the house for just under $365,000 at the end of December, and then there were quite a few price cuts, bringing it down to $330,000. They then removed the listing and relisted here in April at $330,000, and just recently at the end of June, the house sold for $310,000. Based on the fact that there was a 15.1% price cut from the original list price, and that it took over 6 months to sell, I would say this market is definitely feeling some pain. And finally, we have this 4-bed, 2-bath house in the same zip code. It has a nice screened-in pool area, and this is just under 2,500 square feet. So this is a very large home. The inside is a little bit dated, but it does have some nice touches here, like the vaulted ceiling. And overall, I am a big fan of this pool. It looks like it's in good condition, it's not dirty, and it's something that somebody could use right away instead of having to put work into. If we look at the estimated value here in July of 2023, it was somewhere around $700,000, but as we know, this sold for $510,000, nowhere near that estimate. The house was listed for sale almost a year ago for $699,000, and then there was a series of price cuts, bringing this all the way down to $599,000 in the middle of February. Even with a $100,000 price cut, this didn't sell, so they had to cut the price by another $24,000, and then the final sale price was $50,000 below that, or $525,000. The price was cut by 24.9%, and it took almost a year for this house to sell. I would say this market is definitely definitely experiencing a correction, if not a potential price crash. And let me show you one other crazy detail here that I noticed. Back in 2006, which was around the peak of the previous housing market bubble, this house sold for $449,000. 18 years later, it only sold for $525,000. That means this home only appreciated in value by 16.9% over 18 years, which is terrible. So whoever bought this house back in 2006 and then sold it in 2024 probably made next to nothing after accounting for their closing costs on the original transaction and the commission paid to their real estate agent for selling the home. That's going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoy this series, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss my next Florida housing market video. And be sure to leave me a comment down below if there's any specific areas in Florida that you want me to check out, or in the country, in a future housing market video. You can click below to watch my boots on the ground video in Port Charlotte, where we looked at some listings in person, and you're not going to want to miss it, as the hurricane damage was absolutely insane. I hope to see you there.